Hello there, commanders, and welcome to another episode of Persian Faction Preview. In today's episode, we are previewing Xerxes, second commander in the Persian faction. The first one was Cyrus, so go watch that video if you missed it, as we'll be drawing comparisons, I'm sure. Anyway, I'm also playing on Naft Throwers, another premium unit that you could have seen in the Persian faction tech tree preview. A link to that will also be in the top right corner for your convenience. But in this video we are going to focus on Xerxes and his abilities only. But before we get into melee and we can actually start testing those abilities, let me point out one thing that I should have pointed out in the previous video, but well, I just forgot about it. These guys have voice acting. China didn't, still doesn't, because obviously they're not going to do English voice acting for a game that is only released and licensed in China. So why do these guys have voice acting? Well, the answer can be only one. Persia received its voice acting during wargaming. And I would imagine you add voice acting towards the latter part of the faction development, rather than the earlier ones. So you could assume that Persia was in post-production in wargaming already. And even if it wasn't, if it just was pre-production, it was still, being worked on since then. But anyway, let me get into the abilities and we can talk about it later on in the video and also in the comments. So let me know what you think about CA holding on onto Persian faction for so long. Okay, so first Xerxes' ability is Invigorating Strike. Let me use it now because it will be useful. So as the name suggests, it invigorates you, it heals you. But let's read the actual details. So Invigorating Strike, it is a strike damage heal. The men strike dealing damage and knockback on successful attacks. They will then heal slightly over time. Targets frontal cone, affects enemy unit itself. Cooldown 60 seconds, which is quite long for a strike, very long actually. Duration 3 seconds, and then on self invigorated duration 3 seconds. 3% health recovered every 1 second, so it's 9% health within 3 seconds of the duration of this strike. And then also 11% melee attack, which isn't much, especially since it lasts only 3 seconds, but it helps you to actually land the strike, because strike is, your chance of landing a strike is calculated just like any other hit between your melee attack and your target's melee defense. So let's use that to heal us up again, and since I see we're losing this fight, let me disengage. So his second ability might help us in this predicament that we have found ourselves in, and let's see what that is. It is Tyrant Slash, which is buff and damage over time. Drive them and forward, increasing speed and ability's recharge rate, but dealing damage to them for as long as the ability is active. It gives you 21% movement speed, 50% ability's recharge rate, and 50% melee attack, so it would have been useful in that melee fight as well. Have we learned of this ability earlier? But let me use it, and as you will see, all of our soldiers are taking 5 damage per second, or maybe even more often. Well, it's hard to see if those are individual soldiers, etc. But yeah, you're taking some significant damage. It is very difficult to see because somebody said to put black font on a dark gray background, which is very hard to read depending on your screen settings and your contrast and saturation and whatnot. But mine are low, so I don't see it. And yeah, I see what that this unit was about to die, so I should have disabled it. But it doesn't matter, we'll bring it back up here. So yeah, about this ability. This unit is in melee. I see. This invisible floating sword and shield got stack, which is our commander, who doesn't have a model yet. So the units do have models, the generals don't. So good job, Xerxes isn't getting stacked, and now teleported.
Our main base is being attacked.
'Getting stacked, getting stacked. There we go. So, about his ability. 20% movement speed is nice, but at quite a hefty cost of your HP. Let us use it now, as we are getting 60 lashes.
Under attack.
Not 50, not 100, not 69. Oh, we can use this one as well, since we're playing Naft Throwers. It's the same as Incendiary Shot, so they are grenades, and somehow the Incendiary Shot, which is arrows, those arrows are also grenades. They're explosive arrows. Oh, well, those Persians were very innovative. But anyway, let's compare Tyrant Slash to similar abilities. So similar abilities, Tyrant Slash in the game would be Forced March, which also is a toggle. It gives you movement speed, and instead of costing you HP, it costs you morale and missile block chance. But the thing is, you can always disable it, and then morales and missile block chance pretty much instantly go up to, well, missile block chance instantly, morale slowly goes up to where it is supposed to be. But health, you're not going to recover it unless you go into melee and start using invigorating strikes. But I would rather have the damage I would take from the melee units I'm fighting with. I would heal that damage that they deal to me rather than the damage I have dealt to myself. So it is a very situational use, I think, and you will need to be very, very careful as to when to use it and when to avoid it. So overall, I'm not a big fan of this ability at all. But anyway, let's see what the third ability is. Also, okay, one more thing to note before we move on to the next ability. I've mentioned the movement speed, but abilities recharge at plus 50%. Do not get fooled. It is recharge rate, not cooldown reduction. So, in actuality, how the math works is that it brings your ability recharge rate to 150%, not 200% if it was a cooldown reduction, right? So that means that Invigorating Strike, which has 60 seconds cooldown, is going to be on 45 seconds cooldown, not 30% cooldown, as you might have assumed, have you not understood what ability recharge is and how it works. So, I don't know, in League of Legends terms, League of Legends also had cooldown reduction previously, now it has ability haste, and ability haste is essentially ability recharge rate in Arena. So, there we go. If you play League of Legends now, you know. Well, I don't, and I know that because I watch all esports. But apart from that, we also have plus 50% melee attack, and that's constant, right? At the cost of your HP. So it cuts off 25% of cooldown from your Invigorating Strike, so you're going to get that 9% HP more often, 9% HP more often through your Invigorating Strike, but throughout these 45 seconds, I think you're going to suffer more damage from Tyrant Slash than you're going to get back from Invigorating Strike. You also have, obviously, the movement speed, but if you're in melee, that doesn't matter. You have the melee attack. 50%, not that much. Again, I would also imagine, obviously, that with higher ranks, with upgrades, this obviously is going to get higher. But still, is it going to be worth it? I think this ability is going to be very situational, and if it's a toggle, I don't think it should be situational. A toggle ability is like Momentum, like Forced March, like Master Patience, and all of those abilities are meant to be used pretty much whenever possible. So I'm really not a fan of this ability, and it doesn't synergize that well with Invigorating Strike because the HP trade of itself is not that good. Obviously, it helps to do more damage with more melee attack, and a strike will also deal more damage, and you deal it more often. So it accelerates the fight heavily. So if you want to accelerate the fight that you're already winning and are going to win despite using Tyrant Slash, then use Tyrant Slash. Otherwise, I would not use it. And now on to the third ability. Tremble before Xerxes. Debuff area of effect. Intimidate all enemies in a large area, decreasing their vision range and missile block and ability recharge rate. Why is there a second "and" in there? Just use the comma without "and". But anyway, what do I know about the English language and grammar? Affects enemy units, cooldown 180 seconds, 180 seconds, duration 15 seconds, AoE 50 meters, and then on enemy tremble before Xerxes, duration 15 seconds obviously. Minus 65% view range, minus 20% abilities recharge rate, and minus 15 missile block chance. Okay, let's start with the view range. How the hell would that be useful? AoE is 50 meters. It's not an aura, it's a regular debuff, which means for this to work, the unit needs to be within your range. So let's assume the average view range is around 100 meters. So an enemy approaches you, is 100 meters ahead, away from you, and he sees you. He then goes closer up to 50 meters of you. Then you use this ability. It decreases his view range to 35 meters. So he just keeps walking forward towards where you were. And he'll need to make up 15 meters, which is, I don't know, 3-4 seconds of marching, depending on your unit. And then he sees you again. And also, if you walk towards him, you know, that's going to be cut in half, obviously, unless you run away from him and try to make him guess. But such a weird use. I don't know, let's say you use it in a forest. So if you use it in a forest and you see the enemy because you have watchtower, so you know when to use it, you use it, and then you alarm the enemy that there is an enemy Xerxes within 15 meters of him, because your view range slightly suddenly got shorter. Ooh, teleport.
A new capture point has become available.
So, and you're also decreasing 65% of it, and your view range is already very, very short in a forest or in tall grass. And you're going to reduce that by 65%, that's only going to cut off a few meters of vision anyway. So it makes close to no difference. Yeah, I don't really see how that is at all useful. Unless you would increase the ability range up to over 100 meters. But then I think it would be way too large AoE for what comes next, which is ability recharge rate, and maybe also 50%, just 15 missile block chance. So 20% abilities recharge rate, it's okay, it's decent, right? Your enemies will dish out their abilities 20% less frequently. So there's that. But that's pretty much about it. Okay, 15% missile block chance. For you, if you use it as Persia, if you were to use it on archers, yeah, cool, but you need to get within 15 meters of it. If you use it as Sparabara, which do have bows, then yes. But 15 missile block chance isn't that that much. Well, the hell, once again, let's go and have that. So it isn't that much. And it would only work if you have a proper ranged ally nearby you. So a Kanane, Ambiorix, Zhuge Liang, Sun Ren, Caesar, etc. with their respective ranged units. Then the 15 missile block chance can be quite useful, especially in the meta where pretty much every meta commander has over 100% missile block chance or close to, especially on high tiers when everybody gets raised shields. That can nullify. Almost, because raise shields is plus 25. This gives minus 15. But then again, maybe with upgrades, it will go up. And then if your ranged ally is Kanane, Kanane can also apply their own hand to 3 units, which is minus 28 missile block chance. So you can reduce missile block chance of key enemy units, such as Leonidas, for example, trying to defend a point, quite significantly. and then that can make quite a bit of a difference.
Capture point.
So that is situational,
A new capture
and the situation is
available.
you have a ranged ally and the enemy has high missile block chance, so that your minus 15 actually makes some significant change. Okay, let's throw this and just get into fighting instead of just looking around at them. Looking around? Just looking at them, okay. So, to sum up, the Tremble Before Xerxes ability, I'm not that big of a fan of it. The recharge rate, yeah, cool. They have 20% less strikes, or use strikes 20% less frequently. And other abilities as well, obviously. Or rather, that would be true if your Tremble Before Xerxes was active for the entire cooldown of the enemy abilities. So you're going to slow down that cooldown 45 seconds in total. And that ability itself is on a quite long cooldown of 3 minutes. Obviously, again, it will most likely, the cooldown will decrease, duration will increase with the upgrades. But are those upgrades going to be that worthy? The view range is kind of a scam. With the recharge rate, yeah, that is a nice aspect of this ability, but 20% is not that much. And 50%, 15, not percent, missile block chance.
Capture point has become available.
Yeah, alright. But what Xerxes lacks to me is a proper punch to his abilities. Like, none of them scream, yeah, that's a good ability. They're okay abilities. And Tyrant Slash is situational. Tremble Before Xerxes is situational. And Invigorating Strike is pretty good, but on a long cooldown. So, can't really say I'm a fan of Xerxes. Really not a fan of his abilities. And the 50% abilities recharge rate is pretty good, but for it to be actually good, those other two abilities that he increased the abilities recharge rate of would also need to be good. An Invigorating Strike, yes, sure, but we already covered. I would assume Tyrant Slash takes away more HP from you across those 45 seconds that you need to wait for another Invigorating Strike than Invigorating Strike will recover. So, yeah. And its melee buffs also not very impressive. We'll see how he improves with upgrades. Maybe he'll have some crazy scaling into upper levels. But for what I can see right now, and compared to Cyrus, yeah, I think he's quite weaker. The game suggests us that he is a Sparabara commander, so imagine using him on Sparabara units, which we are going to cover in the future, maybe next week, maybe a little bit later. Again, my schedule that was already planned out got turned on its head because CA just recently came out with an announcement that they are delaying the release of the new faction. Because previously they said new faction in June, and now they said maybe the first half of July. So, yeah. I'm operating at a maybe. At a maybe this faction will release at a 15-day period of time, and maybe it will be the Persian faction. So I'm taking a huge gamble in here in terms of my content, because if it turns out it's gladiators, and I have been publishing Persian videos for so long,
An allied
and that's a
capture
whoopsie.
point has been lost.
But hey, CA refuses to talk to me about Arena, so what can I do, right? I'm trying to help, but my help is based on guesses and assumptions. Which leads me back to our conversation from the beginning, which was the fact that they've got voice acting for Xerxes and Cyrus and Persian units. And because that's the case, they also have models, which compared to China, they don't have. And China also doesn't have voice acting, so that means China must have been developed at a later point and they have decided to push China out sooner. I mean, obviously, the game is published in China now, and they have held on to Persian faction for the right time. Is now the right time? Have they finally prepared some marketing strategy? Sure hope so. Are they ready to properly advertise the game for the first time in forever? For the first time just ever? Well, I'll leave the discussion to you in the comments, and I guess myself. You can also join our Discord, you can discuss the game there as well. You can find some people to play with, especially in the upcoming event. Well, upcoming, it already started actually, by the time this video will be released. Yep. Oh, it already started. Yeah. But the double XP weekend starts a little bit later. It doesn't start from the first day of the event. Yeah. So anyway, go do that. You can also help us bring the war back to the west. But until then, I will see you on Arena's Battlefields, Commanders.